Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Podcast. My name is Mark Devlin, and this is Scotland's #1 anti-nationalist podcast, going out live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm here with my co-hosts David Griffiths and Niall Fraser.
Good evening,
what are we going to
everyone.
be talking about tonight? Oh, go ahead. What are we
Good
going to be
evening,
talking about
everyone.
tonight?
Tonight, I will be asking, will your threatened independence referendum be cancelled on legal grounds?
And tonight I'll be talking about Scotland's failing census debacle.
And I'll be talking about the billboards that everyone is talking about.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
All that and much more coming up after the titles.
We're on.
We're on. Oh, Mark's
I think Mark's muted himself.
Things a little bit tricky, but
There you go.
Okay, there we are. As usual, I'd like to start the podcast with a big thank you to our donors. It's you that made this possible through your donations when we did the crowdfund a few months ago. And now we're already up to episode 21. It's difficult to believe, almost half a year done. Thanks to you all. And also, we all like to thank our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for partnering with us to get this podcast out to you on Facebook.
And don't forget, you can also watch on Twitter and on YouTube, where you can subscribe to the Majority.
And please don't forget to like, share, comment, extend our reach at the click of a button. Good comments get read out, funny ones get read out twice or 3 times. Keep them short, no essays, and we'll try to get as many in as we can.
Right, that's all good stuff. So we have a packed show tonight, so we'll just get on with it straight away. Coming up, Niall's going to be talking about census debacle. David's going to ask if there is a legal if next year's independence referendum is going to be refused on legal grounds. And but first, let's see where we are. Okay, I'm in my new studio here, so if you're experiencing any technical issues with the feed, please bear with us. We're doing our best, and it's always a bit of a technical challenge to put this thing together. Actually, we'd be quite surprised. Anyway, moving on. David, are SNP councils rubbish?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, SNP councils are stronger for rat infestation, stronger for filthy streets, or for overflowing bins. So SNP councils, if that's what is your bag, then the SNP councils are for you, guys and gals.
Not only are they rubbish, Mark, they're rubbish squared, or even cubed, if you think about it. They're so bad. I mean, literally the worst councils in the land. I mean, Glasgow is ridiculous with the amount of refuse on the streets now. Absolutely ridiculous.
Well, seeing as we're all in agreement with that, then some good news for our followers. Many of you who have donated to our SNP Billboards Are Rubbish campaign. Here it is, raised £4,379 so far, and it's still open. We have until, of course, the election itself on May 5th, next Thursday. We can still add on a panel here and there if we get enough support. So we have multiple places, the billboards in multiple places, and I'm just going to show you this one here we have on London Road. Hey everyone, we're here today in front of the Majority's SNP Councils Are Rubbish billboards. Bin the SNP. Thank you all for participating, for donating, and for your support. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely glorious, Mark. Absolutely glorious.
Thanks.
Well done.
So I'm quite happy to see those up on and around Glasgow. We've actually got 3 in Glasgow. We've got Aikenhead Road, one in Newton Mearns, which has caused quite a bit of talk amongst the candidates over there, and one in London Road, which is the one I just showed. We also have one in Edinburgh at Ferry Road, and next week we will have a number of panels in Market Street, Aberdeen. So spreading the message out there that the SNP councils are rubbish. In fact, I think we talked about this a little bit last week. We had a little bit of trouble because the first company that we hired to put out this message wouldn't actually put the message out. So it was a bit of a struggle to find an alternative, but we're quite happy with the way it's running, getting a lot of publicity. In fact, our favourite newspaper in the world, The National,
Yes, Mark,
decided to run a little piece all about it. There it is there. Ultra-Unionist group, the majority, unveil anti-SNP billboards in Scotland's biggest cities. What's that? What's that all about? Who are these ultra-unionists?
Who are these ultra-unionists, Mark? Who are these people?
Well, we're not even unionists. Never mind being ultra-unionist. This whole idea of being a unionist is it's an import of something that Alex Salmond really started to try and make the situation in Scotland much more like Northern Ireland, and say that anyone who's opposed to Scottish nationalism is a unionist. They're for the union, and it's particularly bad branding for any people who are in Labour or who don't really have a strong feeling about the union, because for them that might conjures up, deliberately by Alex Salmond, conjures up ideas of colonialism and the bad things perhaps about flag waving and so on. But we're not flag wavers, and I often say to people, even if there wasn't a union, I'd still be against your nationalism. So that's because it's just a divisiveness. It's a divisive type of politics that we're against. We're an anti-nationalist group. We're not a unionist group, and I think that's an important distinction.
It doesn't stop the national brand in us, though.
Well, I mean, they'll say anything they like, and in fact, they have a thing in the article. They said an SNP spokesperson said, "This is a group which seeks to ban political parties which support Scotland's democratic right to a vote in its future, which is openly hostile to minorities." Well, I don't know where that comes from, and which has had a secret pre-election meetings with the Tories and Labour. I'm sure
it was so secret. So secret. Yeah. Very secret.
We invited anyone to want to come along. I'm sure the people of Glasgow can see right through their extremism. So that's a brand: extremist, hostile to minorities, anti-democratic, secretive.
Yep, and extreme. Maybe they meant to say that we're openly hostile to minions, and they just misspelled it. That could be it.
That's a better one, David. I mean, it's just the National. This is the second week running they've wrote an article about the majority. They must be getting. Last week we speculated that they were afraid, and now this week we know for a fact they're afraid. So they're coming after us, but let them come. Every time they write an article about us or the majority, it's an advertisement for us. Thank you very much, the National. Thank you.
Yeah, we had this tweet here. Actually, the National's tweet, which is this one here, and under it, I didn't know if that's the number of the things. I don't know. It had 300 odd comments under the. Oh, that's us. 300 odd comments under there, and almost every one of them was saying, "What the hell is an ultra unionist?" Is that just someone
who's really into unionism?
Yeah,
really unionist.
Just a branding. I mean, so in a way, it's like we said this last week. You could fight it, or you just say, like, you're a bunch of idiots. You're a bunch of losers anyway. So we don't really care. Sticks and stones may break our bones, but names sometimes can hurt. But these ones certainly don't hurt us. What it says here, rats. So, this is your specialist topic, isn't it? Niall, rats.
Yes, rats are my specialist subject, having spent a lot of time in Govan Hill. So, in the National article, right, they were talking about how there's no method of accurately counting a city's rat population. There's no accurate way, but we're aware that the estimates do indicate that Glasgow's rat population is entirely in keeping with the size of the city. So there's no method of counting them, but we know that the rat population is in keeping with the size of the city. So how does that operate? How does that work? It doesn't.
It's a bunch of nonsense, really.
It is a bunch of nonsense.
And I think we all know there's these articles, loads of them, about where, the Glasgow Council and the Sturgeon's administration have, not looking after the cities, and the rat population is increasing. Seen the videos of rats chasing people from I think GMB Union. They had their Ratty McRat face, whatever, big inflatable rat and stuff like that. So it's an actual political issue in this, and certainly around about here. I've actually just moved to Glasgow City Council, so I have to deal with that. Unfortunately, I don't get a vote because I'm still registered in the last address.
Oh no!
I know, but these rats are everywhere. Anyway, certainly rats are on our billboard, and that really, the rats upset the gnats.
It triggered them. Triggered.
One nationalist, when arguing with me about Glasgow's rat population earlier this week, said, "I would like to point out that there were only 6,656 sightings of rats in the city last year, down by 7% on the previous year, probably because fewer people were at home because of the lockdown restrictions being relaxed." But imagine saying that there were just the 6,656 sightings, but of course you don't need to see a rat to know that there's a there. So how they can even begin to justify their record on pest infestation, it's just ridiculous.
Lest we forget, remember Susan Aitken's famous quote, someone asked her, is there any municipal workers that have been bitten by rats? And she said something like, well, there may have been minor contact with rats. Yes. We're having a minor contact with rats. I mean, the linguistic play there is outrageous. Look, we've got a problem with the rats. End of. That's it.
Remember we did the Vox Pops a while back,
and
we had the guy, and he was like, "Oh, the rats are in unite. They're scraping at the windows and all this kind of stuff." And people actually, see it around. Anyway, the thing's not necessarily about rats. Rats are just part of the problem. There's rats, there's rubbish, fly tipping, potholes. The list goes on, and the whole thing is basically these things are all happening because they're distracted by going out and talking about Boris and independence and all this other stuff instead of talking about what's on the street. It's really a shocker. So the National would like to say thank you for promoting us, but I did notice a worrying comment underneath the paper there.
How worrying are we talking, Matt?
Very worrying, very worrying. Quite concerning, actually, because I think it really shows the type of mindset that many of the nationalists have here. And I don't have it on the screen, but I'll just read it out. He says, "I cannot wait till this is all done and dusted and Scotland is independent. These people," that's us, you, me, people watching this, "are going to be held to account, and they should be praying I never get near the levers of power in deciding their fate."
Wow.
So listening to too much Sturgeon, that one. You're going to crush us with some levers.
About it. This is, obviously, often say why we fight. We fight because these people would, they want to expel anyone who doesn't think the same way as they do out of the country, and they want to have retribution on the people who have democratically voted against their dreams. That's it. They're so annoyed with it that their dreams have been crushed by reality that they want to take it out on anyone, and that's why we have to stop that.
That's so true. I mean, this week we've had some discussions about the Scots language after a gentleman named Billy Kay spoke in some completely fabricated jumbled up gibberish on Tuesday in Holyrood, and I've been pointing since then, well, nobody speaks like this. And the number of nationalists who have said to me, you should go south if you don't like this country, you should get out of here, we don't want you. I mean, what? Just because I'm pointing out the fact that making up some words in a Scottish accent, English words, does not constitute a language, and they literally cannot compute this at all. They think I'm being anti-Scottish. I was called an anti-Scots bigot today. I'm not quite sure how I can be an anti-Scots bigot, but anyway, that's it. So they're absolutely furious, these people, and it's almost an irrational hatred they have of anyone who they see as standing in their way of democratically, that is. So, and they're threatening all sorts. I mean, it reminds me, that quote they're saying, you better hope I don't get hold of the levers of power, reminds me of when Geoffrey Archer was almost made mayor of London, and he said to an interviewer, you wait till I'm mayor, you'll see then how tough I am. Well, we saw how that worked out for you, Geoffrey, old boy. So let's hope it goes the same way with Susan Aitken and co.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had a thing yesterday. Someone said, well, these are Scots colonialists. No, colonialist. Yeah, I was a colonialist
Right.
bully. I'm like, wait a minute, how can I colonise myself? I'm Scottish.
Well,
Well,
that's
the thing.
probably the
They
new
think
racism,
everything's-
the colonialist.
They think everything Scottish belongs to them. You know, that's the thing, and that's why they get upset, because it's an identity politics. They say this language, this saltire, this kilt, this things makes me more Scottish than you. And if you dare criticize them, then you're criticizing my core identity as a Scot.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's your psychological issue. It's not mine.
Yes,
Actually,
yeah,
I'm just as much
precisely.
a Scot as you are.
Precisely.
So move on. You lost the referendum. That's it. And you know, this psychological game that they try to play with us all the time have been, you know, I'm more Scottishy than you because I support Gaelic signs in, you know, in bathrooms. You're like, no, really. That's not what it's about. We're all, you know, Scots, and we all have different opinions, and you need to accept that sometimes some people win, some people lose their consent, and so on. Big thanks, shout out to the Daily Express, who put a nice article about us today and about the billboards. They very, very good. And also, of course, I forgot to mention that if you don't like the National and think that it's a promotion of hate, especially against English, and promotion of division is a bad thing, then please go to change.org and find our petition, which now has 5,253 people, decent people, who've signed to say that a company like Gannett and NewsQuest should not be publishing this type of divisive commentary and comments and articles, keeping the never-ending going into 2022.
For sure.
Coming up, Niall is going to talk about yet another SNP screw-up, the census.
Yeah.
And David is going to... Oh, wait a minute. David is barely legal.
Barely
Okay.
legal.
Barely
It's often
legal.
been said.
All right. Okay, coming up in a second. Right, David, you're up.
Indeed. So this week, the SNP government received some very unwelcome legal news. This very week, the SNP has been instructed to publish the legal advice it has received in relation to the independence referendum, which the First Minister insists will take place in 2023, i.e. next year. Now, until now, the SNP government had refused to make this legal advice public, arguing that to do so would breach professional legal privilege. But despite their stance, this week, Scotland's Information Commissioner, hands up who knew we had an Information Commissioner, ruled that the legal advice must be made public. And of course, this comes following a Freedom of Information request made by, of all people, the Scotsman newspaper. What do you think about that then, chaps? That legal ruling?
Well, I mean, this could be the nail in the coffin for Nicola Sturgeon. It really could. If she gets a hard stop, that is it. That would be her reign over, done with. And interestingly, well, if we find out that she's known for a long time that it's not going to be possible, then there might be grounds for just straight up dismissal, because she might be running out on promises that she knows she can't fulfill, if you think about it, depending on how long she's known.
Yeah, I think the question to some extent is, what this legal advice, is it changeable from now? So they go to a lawyer and they say, or the legal team, and they say, right, what are the ways we could possibly have a second referendum, right? And basically it'll be, all right, well, we can have a referendum, pretendy ref, we can have advisory referendum. It doesn't mean anything. We talked about this before. Advisory referendum doesn't mean it doesn't really mean anything. But the Scotland Act is quite clear about that, and it says that anything relating to the Constitution, any referendums relating to any law relating to the Constitution is reserved, and it's not even a law. It's not even that it has to go to the Supreme Court. It's not even counts as a law, which is a bit of a strange thing. So they just can't make laws like that. So there is no law that can be made, if you know what I mean. So anyway, but the legal people can say, right, well, we've got some kind of avenue for you to do this. And I think maybe a lot of it's like, we've got an avenue that we can present as credible to our supporters, but it's not actually really credible legally. And I think that's a lot of what's going on.
That's the key. That's basically the crux of it, Mark. That's the key.
Yeah, I think they have to keep this pretense going that there is a path to a second referendum. And I mean, basically, you can go to our objective is to demoralise the SNP and say, well, look, there is no path to second referendum. You have there's no way Boris is going to give you an S30. Your pretendy ref is illegal, and even if it goes ahead, it will be boycotted. And then the UN isn't going to send white helmets to help you out. It's just this is. I mean, I've had that this week. People going, "Oh, the UN self-determination is some principle like
what nutter is saying these things? Absolutely not.
It's absolutely crazy. And they go on, and then when you say, "Look, that's just not going to happen," there's no way that's going to happen, because not even. First of all, the Scots self-determined in 2014, right? So that's an illegal referendum. That's pretty much the end of the matter. And what extra national or ultranational over body is going to say go against that? And the UN's been trying to get Israel to do stuff for 60 years. Doesn't ignore it.
Indeed.
Sorry, David.
No problem at all. So let's not forget there is an important precedent here in terms of legal advice and the SNP's ignoring it. During the Holyrood inquiry into the SNP government's mishandling complaints over Alex Salmond's behaviour, the SNP's legal advice was only handed over with huge reluctance. And remember, it took the threat of a vote of no confidence in John Swinney before the legal advice was even produced. And this was a committee headed by an SNP MSP, Linda Fabiani. Now, the reason they were so reluctant to share the legal advice is because it showed that the SNP's lawyers had advised the SNP government to give up its legal battle with Alex Salmond because they weren't going to win. But the SNP ignored their own lawyers' advice, proceeded with a case against Salmond, and lost. And the cost to Scottish taxpayers of the SNP ignoring its own lawyers' legal advice, let's not forget, and ploughing on regardless, was over £600,000. So the suspicion is maybe this could be what's coloured
even more money.
No, yeah, exactly. So to me, this is why they were so reluctant to give up that legal advice then, because they probably saw this coming down the track, I would guess. But
that's a good point.
Yeah, possibly, because I mean, they don't want to give up any information. And in any event, if they do, they'll just redact it all anyway, so it's illegible. So
I don't know if they can really redact it all. I think they can only redact in certain circumstances. I mean, they can redact a lot, of course, but I think there has to be good reason for redactions in general. So even with the Salmond legal case, most of the redactions were to do with people's names and
that's true.
Jigsaw identification and so on. I don't think that's necessarily the case here, and I don't know what pressure can be brought to bear on the redactions. I believe the redactions are actually not even done by civil service, perhaps, rather than actually doing it from the government itself. And it's not quite the same, is it? Anyway, so yeah. But
yet more money spent, yet more funds lost, yet more taxpayer burden. How much money is the SNP weighing us down by? You know, I mean, they've wasted so much money; it's almost incalculable how much money they've wasted here. This administration is just unbelievable when it comes to money. They're like a teenager with a credit card. They're maxed it out 10 times over. They just keep going. Just keep going. Just keep spending more money. Just keep redacting. Just spend more money. Get more lawyers in. Get more special advice. Unbelievable sums of money here. And at the time where the purse strings are very tight for everyone in this country now, and energy bills are going up, the price of everything's going up. The only thing it should be going down is the SNP spend, but that's going up as well. Always goes up.
Indeed, it does. But I mean, leaving aside the cost, because there's going to be considerable cost here, the deadline has been set by this Information Commissioner, and that is 10 June. And by that date, they have to produce this legal advice in relation to the referendum. Now, the suspicion is that the legal advice probably states that they've got very little chance of getting their own way and being able to hold a referendum. But so we can only speculate, of course, what's in it. But you would have to ask yourself, given that the SNP has been so reluctant to produce this legal advice, can there really be anything but bad news in it? It's very unlikely they would have said, no, we're not telling you, if the lawyers had said, yep, you're absolutely fine, you've got a watertight case. So I suspect that in addition to the almost certain waste of money that's going to be incurred in any kind of fighting of any legal battle, I think they know already there's absolutely no chance, which makes it even more baffling why Sturgeon to this day keeps saying, oh, no, there's going to be a referendum next year, absolutely, in 2023. So goodness knows what's going to
I think that's a bit strange as well. I mean, they said that the information shouldn't be released until June the 10th, but we've got a whole council election where they're basically saying the whole thing is we're going to have a referendum in 2023. But if that legal advice, which is already known, casts doubt on that, and it doesn't even need to cast a lot of doubt on it, then or at least say that it's the case is weak. It doesn't need to say that. It just says that it just needs to as I say, cast doubt on it. Then that's a problem. Aren't they really going out under false pretenses in that case?
Absolutely. It almost makes their manifesto fake if that's the case. So and you just have to wonder, really, would they hold this information back if it was news that favoured them? And I take the point that the Information Commissioners, the guys set the deadline, not the SNP. True, but nonetheless, really, what's holding them up? Why would you not want to issue this legal advice if their case is so strong? So I suspect it's anything but strong.
Obviously going to be damning, David. Obviously.
Sounds like it, guys.
It's
one to watch, gentlemen.
Well, I think you have to say good work by Scotsman and Conor Matchett, the journalist there, who's working on this for 13 months to try and
outrageous.
13 months of legal fees and wasted time for them to get it out. And a big, of course, thank you to the judge, I can't remember his name, for also doing that. Coming up, now I was going to talk about
the census.
And then after that, we're going to have Zimmer of the Week.
Yes.
Where are we? Okay. Well.
Right. So this week we've seen the deadline for the Scotland census extended amid widespread non-return. So there's a bit of confusion around how much money it's going to cost us to extend the deadline. I've got a figure here of 10 million, but the actual in the video somebody quoted 30 million. So unsure how much it's costing. We're lowballing it at 10 million. Put it that way. And that's just to extend the deadline of the census, an extra 10 million to extend the deadline. Right? Okay. I think the whole census was costing upwards of 130 million. So why are people not returning the census? This is where we want to get to the root of the issue here. Is it a boycott? Is it civil disobedience? Is it the nature of the census itself? You know, so I'd like your input, some guys. It's so. I posted a tweet of the census today, and it's absolutely chock full. It's imbued with identity politics, and I mean imbued. It's wall to wall.
Yeah, we'll get that on the screen there here. I think this is the one you're talking about.
Yes, please. So if you scroll down a bit, and let's
Right.
just read out some of these questions, right? Okay, Asian, Scottish Asian, or British Asian. Are you Pakistani? Are you Scottish Pakistani? Or are you British Pakistani? Can you believe this?
Chinese, Scottish, Chinese, and British. What is that? What does that mean? Actually, I mean, what I don't know. It's almost incomprehensible to figure out what this means.
Perhaps this is the root of why it's not getting returned.
Could be.
And
that's part
bear
of
in
it,
mind, in order for the data to be valuable, it needs to have a really high return rate. So if we've ploughed per se 130 million into a census and 70% comes back, it's going to be useless. That 130 million, the data you've got is useless.
Yeah, I think it's a real problem here with this kind of making it overly complex for people. I filled it in, and of course, I mean, a lot of people have complained about different questions, but there was a question there. It's like, do you speak Gaelic or something like that? And you know, my son's actually learning Gaelic or Gaelic or whatever you want to call it, and good for him for doing that. It's fine, you know, but whatever. But the way the question was framed in such a way didn't say, "Are you learning it?" For example, it just said, "Do you speak it, hear it, or speak it, or
and that's a
understand
tick
it?"
in the box, presumably, for another Gaelic speaker.
Yeah, well, but I think a lot of people might just go, "Yeah, I speak a wee bit of Gaelic, so or I've heard a
Yeah.
little bit of it, so I'll do that." But you know, I put in he doesn't speak it. I mean, he knows a few words here and there, a few sentences, and that's great. But that's not an understanding of a language. And I think that type of confusion for me to filling that in, you're like, why is this a confusing? Why don't you just say I'm learning it? Even if in that case I'm learning, I understand it well. I don't understand it well. I'm a native speaker. It's not that complicated, you know.
Just highlighting some of the great comments here. There's John T. Scott. A large percentage of the population may not have received either postal stuff or have no digital skills, like many elderly pensioners. Yes, totally aware of that, and it is a big problem, especially when I think the majority of the census has been done online. I think you have to request a paper copy, but the majority is filled in online. And you know, I'm anecdotally, I know a lot of people when they're helping their grandparents fill it in because they're just so confused.
Yes,
so confused.
Yeah, I mean, surely it should just be about, all right, where you live,
counting the people,
and that's
counting the
who lives in the house.
This gigantic census, and it is gigantic. I think it's 17 or 18 pages, guys. Right, just 17 or 18 pages, which could be half of one page. It could be how many people stay here. Right, there's 4. Male, female. Okay, next house.
Yeah, I know, because I do. I for a while I was doing ancestry and looking at my family history and stuff like that. And of course, the big part of that is looking up census records for the past. And while it'd be great to perhaps to find out, you know, whether my ancestors were, you know, part Chinese or whatever, I don't know, whatever, or part, you know, all these questions. It's not necessary. It's not actually not necessary. It'd be better to have complete. It's always better to have complete information, you know, with a small set than a large set of incomplete information. And it's also, of course, I think we're all aware that these questions are pretty much designed to try and make it more Scottishy. You know, this whole idea, we talked about this today a little bit earlier on before the show, that the Scots language question, do you speak Scots? No definition of what Scots is. It's not, do you speak a few words of Scots in your daily life? And you know, and basically you've got people out talking to you today, David, who are saying, yeah, I'm bilingual, English and Scottish.
That's so ridiculous. So ridiculous. It's such an absurd statement.
And the same people say, oh yeah, but people in England, they've just got dialects, but in Scotland, this is a language. It's a language. Oh, yeah, it's a language.
it's not.
And if you look back, there is a Scots language which died from an English language, both of which have their roots in the Middle English language, which is a medieval language. So
Yes.
Scots is just a derivation of English. That's all it is. The Scots language. I mean, you have that. I'm sure you heard that gentleman talking the other day, and it was just basically English words mispronounced. Like, I'd like to thank you for in Parliament. Well, that's not a Scottish word. That's just
I know.
deliberately. I mean, how many times have you ever heard anybody saying the word thank? I've never heard it.
I've never heard of that in my life, David. Never, ever.
I mean, we could
never,
go on
ever,
about
ever.
that for quite some time. But I mean, the idea is this in the census, I think, is to just say, okay, we're more Scottish. Oh, you're a Scottish Chinese person. Exactly. Oh, that's great. You're not British then. All right. And that act of marking that down is important. They used to. Yes. There was the North Koreans in the Korean War. What they used to do was to turn soldiers was they had captured was they would get them to just write one small statement against America, right? If they could say one thing you don't like about America, and the person would get them to write that down, and then another one, and before they know it, person's like turned. And this is part of it. It's a kind of programming, social programming, gaslighting, even perhaps. And it's not right. We just need to have a basic, simple census that anyone can fill in, and the questions are clear. And it doesn't cost a fortune.
It could be reduced to maximum 5 questions. Maximum. The whole having to fill in an essay basically to get a census done is just patently ridiculous. I mean, absolutely. For me, the length of the questions, the nature of the questions, the absurdness of the questions, the fact that they've injected identity politics into all facets of this census is that to me explains the non-return rate as well as the sort of digital gap with the elderly trying to fill it in. Combine all that and that explains the percentage. But
well, it should also have been. It's a year late. There was no the English one was able to be done during the pandemic. There's no reason why this should have been done separately as well. It should have been administered by the UK. It's a UK census. It should be centralised, and everyone has got the same data. This is not rocket science, really.
Bear in mind.
I don't know if you saw the comparison stats. The return rate UK was 97% on an enormous number of people. I don't know how many households that relates to, but it's 60 million people. Scotland, with its 5 and a bit million, the return rate was 74%. Now, this is a decision that's been taken to split it away from the UK census, as you say. Well, surely somebody's going to have to review that decision. Somebody at Westminster level to say, sorry, guys, but if you can't get on a far smaller sample or a far smaller population base, return rate than 74%, then sorry, we're going to take it back into centralised control, because you can't go and do this. The census is important, but they're just distorting
it's just a replication as well. It's a replication of a whole census department, right? And I mean, it's £100 million or whatever it is to do that when you could just reuse the UK
and
one. How difficult is that?
The UK offered the SNP administration to do it in conjunction with the UK census. They said, let's do it. And more to the point, you could piggyback off it our marketing. So you didn't need to spend all this money on the marketing of the census. And you remember that advert? You know, there was this person taking a school around or something. They were like unpacking a school. It was a really weird advert. But it's nothing about... there was a comment come up. It's invading the private lives. The nature of the questions is asking everything about you. You know, where do you go to work? There was a weird question. See if you look at the census. Was there anyone staying over in your house on the 20th of March, 2022?
I remember seeing that question.
That's what we're staying over. The rat.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Roland, his name was. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's it.
We need to know how many sleepovers are happening, especially on March the 22nd, 2020. It's just ridiculous.
Well, they can't even do a proper census of the rats, so they can't do. My mum used to say this, like they used the expression. I don't know if you know it. It's like she couldn't run a menage. You know that
Absolutely,
expression?
Yeah.
I never knew what that menage meant. It took me years and years to figure what that
Well, to be
It's
fair,
a work holiday fund, isn't it, a menage?
yeah, something like that, right?
If the
But that's what it's like.
SNP
That's the thing.
Yep.
if the SNP got a hold of a rat census, what would it look like, guys? It would be like, are you a Scottish rat? Are you a British other British rat? Or are you just a rat? It's
Do you just identify as a
outrageous.
rat?
Yes, just
The
identify as
mouse
a rat.
identifying as a rat.
That's the one.
A hamster or gerbil? Are
Oh
you,
dear. Crazy stuff, guys.
Are you cheese curious? I mean, these are the questions that we need to have.
That's such a dad joke, Matt. Oh my god. Oh my god.
These are just these are the questions we really need, in the sense we should actually put out a joke sense. Unfortunately, this isn't a joke. This is a tragedy
Yes, there's
at the hands
millions
of
of pounds on
incompetent
the line.
money spenders who
Yes,
think there's a bottomless money tree. That's not quite the right thing, but I think you get the idea. A bottomless money pit.
Yeah.
You shake the tree into the bottomless money pit. That's what it seems like. Anyway, moving on. It's the highlight of the week, the moment you have all waited for. It is Zoomer of the week. Right, David, you're going to be up first.
First up. So my nomination for Zoomer of this week is Ivan McKee, the SNP government's Minister for Business, Trade, Tourism and Enterprise. And the reason for his nomination is, on Tuesday, I faced questions in Holyrood over the legendary missing Cal Mac ferry documentation, for which Audit Scotland has criticised the SNP government. So heroically, Sturgeon sent Ivan out to take the flak. And so he answered questions, reading verbatim from notes in front of me, literally read like this without even lifting his eyes once. And he insisted that throughout the investigation, his first answer was, throughout the investigation into the delayed ferries, the SNP government has been absolutely transparent. They've looked everywhere, but inexplicably, we just cannot find the missing documents. So that was pretty much his first answer. But we have committed to a review of the process. That was his first answer. And he hadn't even been asked anything about this. So he ploughed on by saying that the SNP government is, in fact, or the SNP's nationalised shipyard is making significant progress with the ferries project. And this, let's not forget, is a project which is now 5 years late and more than 2.5 times over budget. And he also confirmed 8 times that, he used the same phrase every time, a formal review of the process will take place on completion of the 2 vessels. That was his kind of go-to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, why isn't there a formal review right now? It's fact they're already 5 years late.
What they're waiting for, exactly. He could review everything right now. Might give them some lessons to get it completed. But he then, of course, made the other go-to point, which is, I'd remind you also the important issue here is that staff at Ferguson's, where the ferries are being built, supposedly, are still being paid their salaries and putting money into the local economies. And let's not forget, those Ferguson salaries are being paid by Scottish taxpayers because the yard's been nationalised. So there you have it, guys. What the good people of Scotland should remember is that...
Wait a minute. Why was this McKee fellow trotted out?
But exactly, she obviously didn't fancy it. She didn't fancy getting the flag. She couldn't be bothered sacrificing poor old Swinney yet again. So she said this dude out. So that's the only thing I can think. But I mean, really, it was a
go out there and make a name for yourself, Ivan. Exactly. Go out there and make a name of you.
Defensible.
Oh no!
Exactly. If you're looking for someone who will just dutifully parrot the party line, like they used to say about the Russians talking about tractor production, that's what it reminded me of. Totally monotone, looking down the whole time. And
I think they actually got tractors produced in the end.
That's true. At least they could do it. Yeah. But that was it. So no ferries have been built, but never mind that, because never mind the fact that Scotland's islands have got no provisions. The important thing is that the SNP saved a few hundred jobs. Pity it cost them £240 million to do it. Yeah. Good value for the SNP, I'm sure. So there's my nomination for Zoom.
Well, I often wonder about these things. It's like you need something like a Scottish Anonymous. They go in and they hack all the government documents, and out they come. That's what we really need.
That's exactly what we need.
Just while we're still on the ferries and the defence of the ferries, the defence is we've handed over 1,500 documents relating to the ferries, just because there's one of the most important documents missing.
Yeah. Who signed it?
Who signed it? We've handed over 1,500 totally useless documents, but the one that you need, we've no got.
It seems a bit
It's
strange.
not a defence. It's not a defence. It can't be used.
Someone has this document. You know the
absolutely. I thought, although nobody signed the contract. So I mean,
which is equally as bad.
That we've handed over more documents than ever before. That's a direct word for word lift from Watergate. It's actually, you see I think it's the Attorney General says it in the film All the Presidents, when he actually says that line, we've handed over all these documents, he gives all the spiel. And it's just it's the line that would be used if you've run out of excuses and you just say, oh, let's talk volume for a minute. Okay, yeah, we've done 1,510 documents. Means nothing if you can't even come up with the contract. It's ludicrous. So I mean, I felt a little bit sorry for the hapless Ivan, but honestly, if you're
you can't feel sorry for them. They made this thing happen. You can't. No, it's not. They made it happen. They can enjoy we can enjoy their discomfort. But it's not. We're the ones that feel bad because we are the ones that are out of money, out of time. The islanders don't have any ferries, and the whole thing is like, as we said before, like a camel does. No, is it a horse? A camel is a horse designed by a committee. That's what the whole thing is like.
Right.
Or Simpson's car or something like that. It's just a complete disaster.
A funny comment coming in for Alison McKee. Somebody needs to rifle through Nick's drawers.
I
wouldn't like to be the person doing that. Believe me.
Well,
definitely not.
Let's hope there's no transparency there. Moving on to. See, this is why I'm here.
That's why you're here, Mark.
Okay, next up. Right, so my Zoomer of the week is this the famous actor Brian Cox, who was on the in this article here, which I don't know where it's from actually, but it was going around on Twitter, and then what's he say there? So what's the headline? I had a look at what was going on. I realised the SNP I'd been snidey about had grown up.
What a joke that is!
Oh my god!
Unbelievable.
All right. Anyway, this article was just—I don't know who wrote it, but it's just like it's basically, I don't know if you read it. It's like I met Brian Cox in a lobby, and every 2 minutes, his press people were saying, "Don't talk to him anymore. He's got things to do." The whole article's it's really bizarre. But anyway, during it. Cox again says, although I'm no longer Labour, I still view myself as a socialist. We've had a lot to say about that on this show and the majority in general. You are not a socialist if you support a nationalist party that wants to divide people. Mm-hmm. And then he goes on to say, okay, thanks, Jim, for that comment there. As I've got older, I've realised I'm a Celt. And there's nothing Anglo-Saxon or Norman about me. Right, I mean, sorry, I just have to think. It's like, what? Yeah, I'm walking down the street thinking, yeah, okay, I remember the Norman conquest. And I mean, I wonder how many genes I've got are Norman. It's like, what kind of thing is that? Nonsense. I'm a Celt, that's who I am. The Irish and Scots to me are the same thing. It's like, this is sickening, actually, bizarre, ethnic nationalism. There's no place in Scotland or anywhere else. Yeah. And, then he repeats this line that in independent Scotland, people can vote for whatever party they like. You should read this. I mean, it's just completely deluded. He's like, people can vote for, once there's independence, people can vote for Labour or the Tories, whatever. The whole point of independence is to get away from the Tories. And so now, the whole point for many SNP is to get away from Labour as well. It's the whole point of the one-party state. So it's, I don't know. Fellas, what do you think about Brian?
I think he's talking out of his rear end. I think he doesn't know what he's talking about. I think he's too busy being an American to ever have even a view on Scotland. I think he might just get a text from Nicola every now and again. Brian, we need you to write something. We need you to do an interview promoting us because we're struggling here. And he's like, no bother, Nicky, I'll do it. It's such pathetic. Every time they roll at these actors, Martin Compsons of the world, Brian Cox's, every single election season, these guys come out in favour of independence. What a joke. They don't even live here. They don't live here.
Yes, it's very frustrating, but you're right. It's the very idea of thinking, I self-identify as someone who has got nothing to do with the invasion of the south of England 960 years ago. That's not me at all, guys. Right? Thanks for that, Brian. That's vital information there. Great. So ludicrous. I mean, but the idea that these guys who are paid an awful lot of money and can sit over in Los Angeles or Chicago, I think it is, Irvin Welsh lives, and say, dictate what should happen back in Scotland. It's just laughable. If they cared at all, they'd be back here trying to make it happen. But no, they're just sitting over there. And he actually did say that, didn't he? He couldn't live in Scotland because the weather's too cold and too damp. Wow. Okay, mate, that's great. Well, why don't you, given that, why don't you dictate the political future of Scotland within these islands? Utter nonsense. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, actors act. That's all they do. Ken Stott's another one. He came up with this line that the electorate of Scotland has only voted 3 times since the war for the party which has won the election. Has only happened 3 times that it's coincided with the party Scotland voted for, which is a total lie. 11 times and counting that's happened. So it's ludicrous. It's just they don't have anything to say other than I would like Scotland to be independent and let's throw in a couple of lines of absolute baloney. That's it. It just should be treated.
Mr. Tommy Boy there says Steve Coogan had the interview the other day
I saw that,
as well. I think he was a bit more couched in things. I think he said he could understand it more now, but I mean he's just another Brexit butthurt guy.
I mean,
exactly right.
I only caught was a minute or two, just wee clips of it. And it seems to be going back and forth. Well, we want the Scots, something like that, as an Englander's view. We look up to the Scots. We want the Scots. So it didn't seem to me like an out and out.
No, it wasn't. And I think people like that need to be reminded that Scotland is the only part of the UK that has voted to remain in the UK, and that we want the support of people in England. A lot of people are saying, and you see it all the time in the comments, people in England are saying, well, just let them go, if they don't like it so much. Like the majority of us voted to stay in the UK. We would really appreciate your support, thanks, instead of giving nationalists exactly what they want.
Quite right, exactly. I must just answer Rita Johnson here. She's saying she loves the laughter and the wit of us, but does the abuse we get sometimes become too much? I'll give you an honest answer to that. Personally, Rita, I love the abuse I get. I think it's fantastic because I know that to see my name in the National, as has happened probably half a dozen times, that means they're taking what we say very, very seriously. It means they're concerned about what we say. If they weren't, they would ignore us. As when I see nationalists saying things to me like, why don't you just leave the country if you love the butcher's apron and all this, I just think, please keep talking, because all you're doing is falling into the trap of proving that you're nothing but bigots. It's all you are. So please keep abusing me. So now I'm happy to be a lightning rod and take all this abuse, Rita. I absolutely mean that.
I add a little bit to that. I think it's fair enough, and if there's normal political discourse, and it's like, okay, some of the stuff that David's talked about, but I felt that some of the abuse from the Scots speakers, actually, there's a group of them, and there's who were promoted also by Janie Godley, and so on. The abuse where they're calling myself, for example, basically accusing me of being a creepy old man and harassing young women and all stuff like that. That first of all, that's of course a complete lie, and they promoted that to thousands and thousands of people, and it's quite something to get literally hundreds of messages saying, "Stay away from her, you dirty old creep," and stuff like that, when it's nothing to do with me at all. And a lot of this is that part is, that can be quite depressing when you just have to face a true online bullying. When we're talking about politics is a different thing, I think, but this is a different type of dimension. I think a lot of this, these people, they want to play the victim, and at your expense. So yes, it can have an effect, I think, as well. I think it works both ways. Sorry, we're running over a little bit. So moving on to Niall.
Yeah. Right.
Sorry,
so
I should have said, I've got my final line though. Great actor, but once again, Cox is talking bollocks.
You couldn't help yourself, Mark. Couldn't help yourself. Right, so my Zoom of the week, I'm going to just keep this short and succinct. I know people have got places to be. It's going to be Nicola Sturgeon. And again, I know I keep upsetting David and Mark by picking her every week. It's not fair. But she deserves it again. And if you would please load up the video where I'm talking.
And
so
let's look
Anis,
at what the judgment makes clear.
Here he is.
Irrational, unreasonable and lawful, given what governments knew. So let's look at what happened in Scotland. As early as the 4th of February, this government's advisers were suggesting that asymptomatic transmission was a possibility. On the 13th of February, this government's advisers were saying that asymptomatic transmission was likely. On the 13th of March, despite warnings from care home staff, this government's guidance said do not hinder discharge from hospitals. On the 26th of March, this government's guidance said individuals being discharged from hospital do not routinely need confirmation of a negative COVID test. As late as the 17th of April, this government's health secretary was saying there was still not a strong case to test patients before discharge, even though testing guidelines had changed in England on the 15th of April. And by the time the government changed their guidance and guidelines on the 21st of April, nearly 3,000 untested people and 75 known positive cases had already been transferred into Scotland's care homes.
Oh, it's quite a shocker.
Right,
Wow,
so
there.
just to bring the tone down, Niall has to make it morbid again. But this is the true cost of incompetent government, folks. We've got COVID positive patients shuffled into care homes that I've been talking about for over a year now, resulting in mass death, and it's almost too much.
Yeah,
And
it's
the bottom line on this is Monica Lennon, I think, is leading the charge on that. So commend, massive commendations to her. Yeah, it's we really need to get to the bottom of this, because there's people's lives have been lost there, people's relatives, each one an individual tragedy, and we need to get to the bottom of it, and there needs to be people accountable, because as we know, there's never anyone accountable in the SNP. It's always collective responsibility, but the buck stops with me. But it's collective responsibility, but the buck stops with me. What a joke. I'll leave you with that, folks.
right. Okay, David, why don't you decide who it is going to be?
This week, let's not give it to Ivan McKee. Feel too sorry for him. I'm going to go with the box this week because I'm sick listening to these overpaid people. Sorry, Nicola. Sorry now. But
Nicola can get it every week. Sometimes she really deserves it each week. I mean, she should have a permanent, Zimmer of the week. But
exactly. So no, the same goes for any other thespian who decides to speak out and tell the people of Scotland how to vote. Not interested.
Entitled to the opinion, but you're entitled to tell them they're talking shite. I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. So. Moving on, we are going to close up. So thank you for everyone watching. Mary's not going to be on this evening, but she's behind the scenes doing the comments. So big thank you to her. Thank you for our donors, all of you who made this possible. I think we're getting into the swing of it maybe now after a while, and hope that you enjoy it. Please tell your friends and what have you. If anyone else is interested in it, you can support with a donation. Go to our website. There's a couple of big buttons there you can click. And thanks to UK Union Voice and United Against Separation for their support. I'm going to leave you with the thought of the week. Perhaps when Nicola Sturgeon praised the election of Emmanuel Macron this week, she should have had a wee look at France's constitution. Oh, actually, I've got this somewhere. Got this here.
While you do that, thanks to everyone for all your great comments this evening. We really appreciate the comments. Thank you ever so much. And please do share after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, basically, France's constitution says, there it is in the first line, France shall be an indivisible, secular, democratic and social republic. No good reason to break up the UK. France, I've talked to French person saying, I'm going to break up the country. No, we are indivisible. As they might say in that terrible accent. So let's put the never-ending to rest. There's no good reason to break up the UK. Let's try and believe we should just ban secession and move on. They lost the referendum. Had their chance. Time to move on. Anyway, thank you, Niall. Thank you, David. It's been a good show. And thank you all for watching. We will see you all again next Thursday at 7 p.m. So good night from all of us.
Cheers, guys. Thanks very much,
Cheers,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye, bye-bye.